Every startup starts with a journey and an idea. And when you're sitting here in the room thinking, how do I start a startup? What are the elements? I'm here to share with you how you can grow faster and think about methodical growth as you evolve. So our journey started in the summer of 2009. It was the height of the Great Recession, and businesses all around the world were struggling. But we had a vision around helping empower businesses to be more productive and collaborative through easy access to the software they need to thrive. So we had a vision that at the time, was kind of under the radar. Not a lot of people knew about it. Not a lot of people knew about cloud, other things, but we had conviction in our vision. So what I want to do is talk to you about your startup journey and inspire you in ways to think about how you can grow faster and more methodical to scale in a way that you can achieve all your objectives in a company. So as I mentioned, we started our journey in 2009 with the vision of making it easy for businesses around the world to find, buy, and manage the software and services they need. And we started from a couple people in an apartment in San Francisco and have now scaled globally to have customers in over 125 countries, reach to 30 million businesses around the world, and over 1 million paid subscribers. And that was only in a short period of time of less than 5 years. And the way we did it was thinking from day one, how can we scale globally? So what I want to share with you are some success secrets that we've learned from ourselves, from our investors, and from others in the Bay Area and globally on how you can accelerate your growth globally as fast as possible. So the overall theme for this session is to have a plan. Many people talk about the importance of a business plan from day one in pitching your investors or getting your seed funding. What I want to talk to you about is the importance of that plan for building a long-term company and really thinking beyond just how do I get my seed funding or my Series A or how do I come up with the initial idea. It's how do you accelerate growth to be a global company as fast as possible. So step number one is really thinking about a growth strategy. So don't just plan to start a startup or to find product market fit. Think about the full establishment of growth strategy. Step number two is make sure that growth strategy has network effects so you can go faster and drive faster velocity in an easier way. And step number three is develop an innovation framework so you don't only scale your first business idea, but you have a framework for consistently innovating and coming up with new ways of exceeding. So when it comes to our growth strategy, AppDirect took the approach of saying, how do we achieve contained growth? Now, what we meant by that is how do you look at a small market opportunity and win there with the intention of then growing and growing and growing? One of our investors, Peter Thiel, who's also the first investor in Facebook, talked about what Mark Zuckerberg's strategy was for Facebook in being incredibly contained. So when we thought about the evolution of a company like Facebook, they started just by focused on Harvard students. Really, the focus was in Boston and Cambridge, and then the initial idea was really just a profile. And now we know that they've grown to go from schools to Ivy Leagues to high schools, and then everyone internationally. And from a geography standpoint, same thing. Started in Boston, then the U.S., then grew globally. And from a capability standpoint, started with profiles, went to news feeds, and now have a whole ecosystem around them. So that idea was something that started small and focused with the intention of growth. So what we said at AppDirect is how do we think of a similar strategy? So if we wanted to achieve the vision of empowering businesses around the world to use software, we couldn't just start by being everywhere around the globe. So we focused by saying we want to work with telecoms to distribute services to their business base in North America with the capability of working with simple web apps. And those applications, in the early days, were applications like Box and DocuSign and others that many of you know and use today. So what does that look like? So what we do is call this the spider graph. And what we said is in step one of AppDirect, we're going to have a really contained growth, which was let's start and we're going to focus on web apps for telcos in North America. And then each of these different levers defined how we could scale. So we could evolve globally. We could go across devices. So instead of just being on the web, we could go on the phone, we could go on the tablet, et cetera. The type of technology or capability that we focus on would initially be a listing to allow you to find apps, but then that expanded into more and more services. This growth plan or this graph was in our first investor pitch, and that essentially allowed us to have a framework for growth as we go. And what might happen is you might change through finding product market fit, and you can evolve on different axes across the spider graph. But essentially, you're aligning your investors with your long-term vision, and you're aligning different stakeholders so people understand where your growth goes. And that helps your team get rallied around the vision. It allows you to have this long-term thinking, and again, lay the groundwork for moving faster as a team. So from there, so once we had this growth strategy and we knew we wanted to start contained, but have a plan to go bigger and bigger, the next was, how do you get a network effect going to make this go faster and faster? Right, so we defined a term called magnetic momentum. And this was something we realized early on, is how do you do one thing that allows others to connect to you like a magnet, so you don't have to actually go outbound and work toward it. So many of you have probably read about early days in startups, the cost of sales or cost of marketing. We essentially achieved over $10 million in run rate with almost no marketing. It was really just me and a couple sales guys going outbound in a very targeted way, but strategically having the right people come inbound to us. So how did we do that? Well, first of all, you get a first customer. Our first customer was a big telecom in Canada, where I'm from, and it took us about a year to actually close this deal. So for the first year, our business was incredibly small, spent a year just closing this first customer. But after that, what we found is people came to us. So because of that first customer, we had small apps in Canada and around the world want to plug into us to be able to connect to that customer. And then because of that, we found opportunities in Europe. So Deutsche Telekom, one of the biggest carriers here in Europe, came to us and said, oh, we want to do what Bella's doing. And then AT&T came, and then DocuSign came, and then Box came, and then Microsoft came. And all of this happened inbound. So we didn't have to focus efforts globally on outbound reach. We just had people coming to us because of this intention around magnetic momentum. So I think if you have the right growth plan, and you can take a contained growth approach or a different type of growth strategy, the next is, how do you really think about having people come to you? How do you create that magnetic momentum? And that allows things to skyrocket. And essentially what that does is accelerate your growth, but significantly reduces your cost of acquisition. So whether you're looking to become a profitable company or whether you're looking to attract investor capital, you can show that you're really efficient with your metrics, and you can also show that you're accelerating your growth. So beyond the thinking about your growth plan, your contained growth strategy, and this magnetic momentum, how do you think about growing even faster? Well, what we talk about is an innovation framework. And this was something we defined very early on with the intention of knowing that it's not just about your first product, it's about how do you consistently repeat innovation as you're addressing new customers and as you're scaling around the world. So what we kind of thought about is, how do you create this flywheel effect of innovation? What we knew kind of early days is, if you track the growth path of a lot of startups, what happens is they grow in an S-curve. So when you start, it takes a while to get traction. Many people, it takes maybe a year or two to actually get your first kind of proof points. But then once that happens, you have a hockey stick effect of a period, right? And that's often when a lot of startups get that attention and growth. But oftentimes that plateaus. So when you see a lot of hot companies going through their Series A, Series B, oftentimes they drop off, because really they're not thinking about how do you consistently innovate. They're only scaling the first thing that they did. So really what I'd encourage everyone to do is, as soon as you start getting that initial traction, come up with a plan to have second, third, fourth, fifth ideas so you can continuously grow. When we look at that, we think about having an original innovation and then opening up what we call the innovation window. So if you wait too long to come up with your second, third, fourth idea, then you already flatten up on the S-curve, and your customers become tired, you're not innovating as fast enough, your investors become tired, and that's where essentially a startup can plateau that could have really had great potential. So what we really encourage is, in that innovation window, to consistently think about ways you can define to your team, not just focused about scaling one thing, but thinking about consistently coming up with new ideas. So I want to share our innovation framework. This is something that we defined and tweaked over the years at AppDirect, but we came up with 3 stages in order to define innovation. The first was the alpha stage. And in alpha, the objective is to find product market fit. So many of you right now who are thinking about your first idea and trying to find product market fit for your seed, your objective is to find a few customers that really say they like your product and they need it, and potentially they want to pay for it. What we do is we just consistently come up with ideas, new ideas that leverage our core competency, and we test them. And we try to go through that same process that we would in the early stages. And what we found is that having small teams to do this is very effective as well. So we really try to incubate what we had in the early days. So right now we're a company of about 400 people, but in these alpha programs, it's pretty much 3 to 5 people in a room really trying to figure it out, really being minimal viable. Then once that graduates, we have checkpoints. So we look at our customer segments and we look at our products that we've been innovating on and we say, do the customers like it? Does this make sense to invest in? Once that happens, we take it to beta. And that's where we want to prove the metrics. So we want to look at cost of customer acquisition, customer lifetime value, and we want to find out, okay, what's it going to take for us to make this a 10, 20, $100 million revenue business year over year? Once it passes that checkpoint, we then transition to our scale org, which is where our core sales teams are, our marketing teams are. That gets the full energy of the company, and we can push it out as strong as possible. But again, we found that having that methodical approach to consistent innovation drives much quicker approach. So what's an example of that? I'm going to take you through a case study. Early days, we realized that what was really important for us to deliver software is having capabilities around recurring billing. So we evaluated, do we build this in-house? Do we partner with someone out there? Or do we buy the technology? And what we thought about is first, we looked and said, do we build it? And we realized the core competency here would take us years, cost us too much money. We didn't have the time to waste. So then we looked at who can we partner with? And we found different billing providers and really narrowed it down to one company that had an open source platform that we could leverage and start testing with. And then as we got to know them, we figured out that it would be actually a great approach to acquire them, bring them onto our company, and accelerate our growth. So within a very short period of time, we were able to go from no billing capability to one of the most robust billing capabilities globally by acquiring this company, which also had 120,000 deployments around the world, a huge developer community, and was really internationally known. So that enabled us to accelerate our growth even faster. And not only did we leverage that and use JBilling for our own core billing, we actually kept the business as a standalone entity that continued to grow. And we focused them on their growth path, so they've grown actually 100% year over year since acquiring them. Their founder and CEO is still there driving that. And that, again, accelerated our growth without taking too much resources across the mental capacity of the company. So thinking about innovative ways to drive that growth and innovation can help you speed your growth even faster. So just recapping, we thought about establishing a growth strategy, and we kind of focused on this contained approach similar to what Facebook did. Then figuring out how you can leverage network effects, which for us, we kind of taken this approach of magnetic momentum. And then finally thinking about that innovation framework of alpha, beta, scale. What that did is allowed us to grow our revenue much faster without going through that S-curve where we had any slowdowns. So when you look at our revenue growth curve, we have this nice exponential curve without any stops and starts. And really, when we think about, talking about these concepts, a lot of people say, is it too early? I'm just coming up with a business plan, I'm a solo founder, I have a small team. Is it too early? What I would say is, it's never too early to establish a growth strategy. The sooner you do it, the more you can align your investors, you can align your team members, and you can show that you're not here to just start one thing that could die out. You're here to grow a long-term enduring brand that's going to have that flywheel innovation, and that's going to have this great network effect that's going to drive revenue and growth for the future. So I'd really encourage you to come up with this plan, figure out and research other companies that have thought of great ideas, and that will help you accelerate your growth even faster. Thanks so much.